Before we begin, there are certain abbreviations that we should know. The first one is English for Speakers of Other Languages, or Isolde. The second one would be English Language Learners, or ELLs. And the third one is Limited English Proficiency, or LEP. In Florida, a child with special needs has the right to learn English as a second language. And the source of that right came with a case decided in 1990 in which the League of United Latin American Citizens, or LULAC, among other organizations in the state of Florida, filed a class action lawsuit against the Florida Department of Education. As a result of that federal case, the parties reached an agreement, and that agreement is called the Isolde Consent Decree. The Consent Decree is Florida's framework for compliance with several federal and state statutes regarding the education of ELL students. In essence, all the parties involved in this litigation came to an agreement on how to implement all the federal and state laws that apply for the education of students with special needs that want to learn English as a second language. The Consent Decree addresses the civil rights of ELL students and focuses on 6 main issues. Number 1, the identification and assessment. Number 2, equal assessment to appropriate programming. Number 3, equal access to appropriate categorical and other programming for LEP students. Number 4, personnel. Number 5, monitoring. And number 6, outcome measure. Now, the first section, identification and assessment, provides the school and the student with the proper placement. The way that this works is that they first conduct a home language survey to learn what is the language spoken at home by the parents or caregivers of the child. Second, an LEP committee is going to evaluate all the educational records of the student. Once that's done, then an LEP student plan is made. If there's an individual educational plan for that child's special needs, or an IEP, then that's also taken into consideration. After that, there's going to be an English language assessment, followed by a classification and reclassification depending on the outcome of that assessment. And as the child progresses, then a post-reclassification monitoring is conducted. Staying with that first step of identification and assessment, there are 6 requirements that the consent decree establishes to evaluate the appropriateness of the services. Now, the first requirement is that home language survey. And it basically answers the following question. Is a language other than English used at home? And does the student have a first language other than English? And does the student speak most frequently a language other than English? Followed by that, you have the LEP committee. That's the team comprised by Isolde teachers, home language teachers, if any, administrators, parents, and others. And the team is responsible for determining the eligibility of a student for an Isolde program. Once that's done, then the LEP student will have a plan. And that is a written document that identifies the student's name, instruction by program, and includes everything that that child would need, including any IEP instructions provided by the school. Now, follow that, you have the English language assessment, and that's an assessment that will test the listening comprehension, speaking, reading, and writing ability of a student. Next, we have the classification and reclassification. The students are classified as LEP. They continue to receive appropriate instruction until such time the student is reclassified as English proficient or otherwise exited the program by the LEP committee. Finally, we have the post-reclassification monitoring. And usually, that's when the performance of the students who have been exited from the Isolde program must be reviewed to identify any patterns of continuing underperformance on appropriate tests and or grades. Now we come to section 2, equal access to appropriate programming. And that's where we have not an individual plan, but a district LEP plan with basic Isolde instructions, home language instructional strategies in basic subject areas, identification of interim staffing and in-service measures, and parental involvement. Equal access to appropriate programming is indicated in the consent decree. The first step is for the district to come up with an LEP plan, and that plan is to be updated and resubmitted every 3 years to the department. Basic Isolde instruction includes instruction in speaking, listening, reading, and writing in English. Home language instructional strategies in basic subject areas include instruction in science, social studies, math, and computer literacy. The district must also identify the interim staffing and in-service measures taken in order to make sure that the instruction is provided by appropriately trained personnel. Parents must also be involved through what's called a Parent Leadership Council. The Parents Leadership Council is an organization created through the consent decree. Every district has one, and it's a group of parents that are involved and participate in their children's educational programming and academic achievement at each school or at the district level. Your school may have a Parent Leadership Council or PLC. If not, ask your district for the contact information of the Parent Leadership Council that services your particular area. The group monitors the implementation of the consent decree in each school districts and ensure that the rights and services of the students that are acquiring a second language are implemented. The parents of ELL students shall be provided by the school district with leadership training and orientation on the district's ELL program, monitoring and involvement procedures. So yes, as a parent, you have the right to be trained and you have the right to monitor the program. Parents of ELL students shall be informed of the opportunity to be represented on existing schools and district advisory committees. The district advisory committees provide the information that the district will report to the department every 3 years through their ELL plan. Councils representing parents of ELL students shall be consulted prior to the submission of the ELL district plans and dropout program plans to the state. And this is where the parents have a really big opportunity to make a difference in their district and for their children. Section 3. Equal access to appropriate categorical and other programs for ELL students. Just like with the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, ELL students have a right under the consent decree to compensatory education, exceptional student education, dropout prevention, student services, pre-kindergarten programs, equal access for immigrant students, Chapter 1 services, pre-first grade classes, homeschool communications, and treatment equally in the implementation of disciplinary actions. Equal access is required for LEP students. When dealing with compensatory education, LEP students have to receive instruction in a manner appropriate to that student's level of English proficiency. LEP students also have a right to exceptional student education, which is provided to both children with disabilities and gifted students. When it comes to dropout prevention, parents have a say on the development of the district's comprehensive program plan for dropout prevention. LEP students also have the right to access student services, things like counseling, pre-kinder programs. Equal access to pre-kinder programs is required for LEP students, including programs such as Head Start, the Migrant Pre-Kindergarten, Pre-Kindergarten Early Intervention, and related programs. Under the U.S. Supreme Court ruling Plyer v. Doe, free, equal, and unhindered access to appropriate schooling is required for all immigrant students. Equal access is also required for LEP students who are within the targeted program, school, and/or area where the funds are expended. That also includes all pre-first grade classes. All written and oral communications between the school and the parents of current or former LEP students must be made in the parent's primary language or other mode of communication usually used by the parents. And when it comes to discipline, no national minority or limited English proficiency student will be subject to any disciplinary action because of his or her use of a language other than English. Section 4. Personnel. Under the consent decree, each teacher must have a certificate and in-service training to instruct Isolde students. Section 5. Monitoring issues. Under the consent decree, the Florida Department of Education is in charge of monitoring local school districts to ensure compliance with federal and state law. Section 6. Outcome measures. The Florida Department of Education will be required to measure outcomes of each district's plan. The metrics to evaluate the outcomes will be retention rates, graduation rates, dropout rates, grade point averages, and state assessment scores. The purpose of measuring these outcomes is to make sure that the program implemented by the school is effective. For more sources of information, you can always go to the following websites. This presentation is made possible by the Legal Services Corporation, America's partner for equal justice. The information provided does not and is not intended to constitute legal advice. Instead, it is made for general information purposes only. This presentation may not constitute the most up-to-date legal or other information. The views expressed are those by the individual author and not by Florida Rural Legal Services. All liability with respect to the actions taken or not, based on the contents of this presentation, are hereby expressly disclaimed. The content of this presentation is provided as is. No representations are made that the content is error-free. If you have individual questions, please make sure to contact your attorney, and if you cannot afford one, you can always contact Florida Rural Legal Services for assistance. For more information, you can contact us at 1-888-582-3410. And if you are a farm worker, please call 1-855-771-3077. You can also visit our website at frls.org. Thank you and have a great day.